This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Sahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellowwall podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 437 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm Josh from Butzko, and today we will talk about Sebastien Haller's emotional comeback in Borussia Dortmund's 4-3 win against FC Augsburg. We will talk about Youssoufa Moukoko extending his contract, and of course winter signing Julian Ryerson joining the Black and Yellows. And we of course will also talk about tomorrow's game against Mainz, and then I presume also about the weekend matchup against Bayer Leverkusen. So a lot of things to talk about, but luckily for me, I am not by myself here. I'm joined by Matthias Zug. Hello, Matthias. How are you doing?
I am doing well, and Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome back to the Bundesliga. It's been 20 years since the Qatar World Cup started and the Bundesliga stopped. And apparently, the Bundesliga decided, you know what? We're going to start off with a bang and just have a crap ton of goals all weekend long. And unfortunately, the Dortmund game was no different. But no, it's good to be back, Stefan. How are you?
Yeah, I'm hanging in there. I have suffered COVID for the first time since the pandemic started, unfortunately, and that is also the reason why we're only coming to you now and not with the preview episode, because I would have loved to talk about the Ryerson transfer and whatnot beforehand, but sadly that did not happen, and I still have a pretty bad cough, so if there's a lot of editing on my part in this episode, I have to take that one, but it is time to talk about all things Borussia Dortmund again, and I'm excited, as excited as you can be about this season, but no, there are genuine points to be excited about, and I think the first thing we must start with is, of course, Sebastien Haller. He has recovered from 2 surgeries and 4 intervals of chemotherapy after his diagnosis of testicular cancer, and having him back actually in the game, not just a friendly, in the game against Augsburg, and having him on the field was a magical moment, and so much more important than anything of the sporting value this game had. So I'm just elated to see Sebastien Haller back, and the way he has handled this entire situation, this disease, is just it's beautiful to see, and to me he's just a role model, and I think to many other people, especially those who suffer a similar diagnosis, maybe have a way to look up to him. Matthias, I'm very impressed at how he handles it, how the mindset he has to approach a situation like this, because it can be a very devastating news that you hear, but instead he just turned around and said, okay, I will fight this disease, and he won very quickly, and as it looks, very decisively.
Yeah, I mean, the term Musterprofi comes to mind. Obviously, a German term there for the perfect professional, and he definitely carried himself throughout this difficult time. And my family, like countless other families around the globe, have been negatively impacted by cancer. 2.5 years ago, my father-in-law died from cancer. And so, it touches all of us. It's not a one-off. I mean, I can't even think off the top of my head of any family that hasn't in some way been impacted by that horrible disease. And so to see him come back, show strength, and, seemingly not miss a beat on the pitch, It's truly inspirational. It's great to see, because obviously there are millions and millions of people who do not have a happy end, that suffer from cancer. And so I'm very happy for him. I'm happy for his family that he has seemingly gotten past it. And obviously I'm happy for Borussia Dortmund in a sporting sense, but also I think it just gives a general motivational uplift to the team. You know, it's kind of one of those moments when anybody kind of slumps their shoulders because it's just not going great that moment in a game. You know, I mean, they can just look at Sebastien Haller like, well, he definitely overcame a hell of a lot more than 20 minutes of annoyances in a football match. So I think overall, it's great to see. So I'm ecstatic for him, his family, and the club.
Yeah, I mean, we could already see in the friendlies the sporting value that he adds, the structure that he lends this team. You know, just his hold-up play alone helps Dortmund out so much, and you can just see that he's a very smart player. And on the other hand, obviously, I have zero expectations towards Sebastien Haller. I'm just happy that he's here, and I know he, being a professional athlete, he obviously wants to win as much as possible and to do everything and yada yada, but I personally am just glad that he's around and helping out. And yeah, you could see that he was a bit fatigued toward the end of his, what was it, like a 30-minute stint or so. But that doesn't really matter. It's just amazing to have a number 9 of his quality finally available, and as the weeks progress, I hope that he will find back to his old strength. Now, obviously, you can see that he is a bit leaner because he was a very towering physique when he arrived here initially before his diagnosis, and obviously you lose a lot of that. And I guess it will take some time until he has it back. But apart from that, you know, there are so many positives and negatives to talk about in this Augsburg game, because he's obviously not the only one who returned. Jamie Bynoe-Gittens, who scored, said he was close to crying after the game, after the goal, because he obviously was also out for about 4 months or so with a shoulder injury. Giovanni Reina, you know, also scored, and I think we can talk about him in a few moments, but I think most importantly, Matthias, is that this game was once again utter mayhem and utter chaos. And you talk about euphoria. While it's great to win a chaotic 4-3 scrap against Augsburg, it is certainly not what I had in mind when you want to restart the season and you know, have a positive start, because as much as it helps to have these 3 points, if you look at the table, Dortmund are 2 points off second place right now, which helps, of course, but you obviously want to build this on the foundation called defensive stability, and that, of course, was not very visible on Sunday afternoon in the Westfalenstadion. So, Matthias, what the hell happened there? And why did Dortmund look like the chaotic selves that they always look like?
So, you know, the interesting thing is, of course, over the years, Augsburg has always kind of been a little bit of a pain. It's almost like Dortmund either blow them away or lose. Those kind of be the two options. But usually when it's very, very difficult against Augsburg, it's not a 4-3. That's the problem. It's usually like a 1-0.
What was the wasn't it also the final score when Alcácer got that free kick in the final second?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, there have been a few. I mean, think about the Holland hat trick, because I think that was against Augsburg, his first match, and so I mean, Augsburg has just been a weird side for Dortmund. But in this match, here's the thing about this match that really pissed me off. Dortmund were in total domination mode. I mean, even throughout the first half, despite it ending 2-2, Dortmund were the significantly better side. I mean, they had control, they had possession for longest spells in that first half. Augsburg did I would not even say little. They did nothing. And Jude Bellingham then getting that goal. Dortmund had a few other opportunities that were pretty good. Youssoufa Moukoko obviously making a bad decision in that moment. I think 9 times out of 10 he's actually going to score that goal. And then I think it was Mats Hummels had a really good header from a free kick that went right to Gikiewicz, who was just standing in the right place. He didn't save it incredibly well. It just happened to hit him, and it was just reaction. And then Bellingham with an absolutely fantastic goal. And then Nico Schlotterbeck showed up. And the funny thing was, my 12-year-old son, when he saw Schlotterbeck was starting, he's like, why is he starting? Because his last impression of Nico Schlotterbeck was in a match against Japan. So it was self-inflicted, to say the least. The good thing is, 2 minutes later, Schlotterbeck, of course, made, he didn't make it disappear, but he scored 2-1. And then there was a 2-2 just before the end of the half. When I look at the match, I'll be honest, the third goal escapes my brain right now. I think
of Augsburg or of Dortmund?
Of Augsburg. I'm trying to remember that one.
That too was a Schlotterbeck giveaway.
Yeah.
He pinked it right back into midfield.
Yes. And the problem is he put Zadi Özcan in an absolutely horrendous position to deal with the ball in that moment. And you can't really do that. But if I go to the first 2 goals, the first goal, it was just really, really weird. And the second goal, I don't blame Schlotterbeck for that one. For me, the second goal, the blame goes to Rafael Guerreiro, who once again decided, I'm just not going to defend today because that's boring. And which is great when you're a left winger, not so great if you're a left back. And I think, I kind of rewatched that first Augsburg goal, and there too, it was just positionally, Guerreiro wasn't in the right place. And also on the third goal, he was, let's just say, a little bit lax. And it just comes back to that same theme we've discussed over, I don't know, the last 3 years at least, that Guerreiro was great going forward. He's a great, creative player. He's a real shit defender. I mean, he's really bad at his actual job defensively. And when you then have Nico Schlotterbeck, who is still young and learning and, let's just say, irrational at times when it comes to certain situations, and then tries to overcompensate, which is something I've always talked about for years, that if players have a lack of trust in each other in defense, they will start making mistakes because they will overcompensate. Talk about Mats Hummels in a minute in this match. And that really led to that. I mean, that second Augsburg goal, Schlotterbeck was caught in a position where, okay, he either has to pull out to the wing or stay central. He couldn't get out to the wing fast enough. And so that opened just that monumental gap in the center. And obviously Mats Hummels lacking the speed to make up for that in anywhere. Some people say, Reason, it's his fault because he was too deep and it lifted the offside trap. I'm sorry. I don't think we can quite go so far to blame the guy at the right back position who was actually where he was supposed to be. Maybe look a little bit more at the left back who wasn't even present. And that's where that gap happened, and the rest is history. I personally was surprised that Nico Schlotterbeck started ahead of Süle. I wasn't expecting that. I thought Schlotterbeck would be on the bench. Hummels would be in his preferred left slot in central defense, and then Süle would be in that right spot. I think Edin Terzic and his team will analyze this, and I'm so it's such a difficult thing because on the one hand, do you bench Nico Schlotterbeck, who's a young player and that could have a negative mental effect, or do you bench him and he's a young player that has a positive mental effect? It's kind of one of those where you got to know the player, but I think he could use a break, at least as far as the match against Mainz goes. I would definitely look at playing Niklas Süle there. Just in general, just to give him a little bit of break. I don't really want to see Schlotterbeck-Süle as a combo in that match, even though Hummels obviously didn't look great defensively. He looked pretty good attacking wise. But that's that back line. There's just, you've always talked about automatisms. Defensively, that's your biggest thing, and there's just nothing there. There's no cohesion there. And that needs to change. And I don't know how to change that right now.
Well, here's the problem. I think had it changed, we already would have seen it, or at least it wouldn't have been this blatantly bad against Augsburg. This is what really is what takes a lot of euphoria, a lot of wind out of my sails, because I look at this game and I see a lack of cohesion that is just glaringly terrible. I mean, a lot of talk, if you listen to the press conferences, is about the lone number 6 with Charlie Özcan. And obviously, the second goal, if you look at it, also, even the first goal, Özcan obviously does not cover himself in glory for the second goal. It's basically just one pass through the middle. There has been, I think, after Dortmund made it 4-3, Augsburg had a chance to make it 4-4. I can't quite remember who it was, maybe Demirovic. And that was just a through ball right past Mats Hummels, who was out of position. And where I don't even know where to begin, but let's talk about the defensive midfield. Because I think Jude Bellingham is obviously a world-class player, and this is going to be a world-class player, but the problem is that his defensive discipline is still lacking quite a bit, because he loves to run forward. He is a box-to-box midfielder, and he interprets that as he has the license to, go forward and score goals, which he does amazingly, but the problem is the defensive rigidity does then suffer, and if your other number 8, if you will, is Julian Brandt, who you mostly put on the wing so he can cut and dribble to the inside in possession, which is really effective and creates wonderful 1-2 opportunities against a man-marking opponent. But if you lose the possession, then he is so far out of the play that he does most of the time not recover, even if he tries. And of course, the fullback situation with Guerrero, we've talked plenty about. Nico Schlotterbeck, I don't know. He has a defensive funk, and honestly, I would have said this last episode if there was one. I'm always worried about Mats Hummels in a post-big tournament period, because I think we've watched Mats Hummels now for a decade plus. And after a World Cup or Euros or whatever, the next half season, his form usually is more, it's bad. Let's just say it. Usually it's bad. So I really hope that this time around it will be different. But the first glimpses of that show that it might not be different, even though he didn't play this time. It's just that, I don't know, something always happens to Mats Hummels when these sort of breaks appear. So I'm not entirely sure what to make out of this. But I think that overall, and especially if you add Daniel Malen to the equation and Yusuf Mokoko, that the overall defensive cohesion of this team is just appalling. And until Dortmund become more of a defensive unit, they cannot be taken seriously as a team with any ambition whatsoever, because I think that needs to be the foundation. And early on in the season, it looked like they understood that task, but this Augsburg game did really make you wonder what they did during this little off-season part. And while working on your attacking set pieces is nice, I still think the number one priority needs to be the defense, and there is a lot of things that need to be sorted out going forward. But that all being said, there were a lot of positive moments too. I already talked about Brandt and his dribbling skills. I think overall there were a lot of positive combinations and chances created by Dortmund. And you said, how dominant Dortmund were in the first half, minus the 2 goals or the 2 chances they gave away. And I think that is really true because Dortmund did look very dominant. They looked very good in their positional play on the ball. They had a lot of off-ball movement, which helped. And of course, they created some really good chances. And in that regard, I think we can also start talking about Julian Ryerson, because I think, especially in the first half, even though he also worked a lot in the second half, I thought he had a very positive impact. Dortmund obviously have to rely quite heavily on their fullbacks against opponents that just try to clog up the middle. And I think given that it was his first game, given that he only arrived like within that week, and immediately started, I think we can be very happy about that. I don't know what your expectations are for him overall. I mean, he did choose number 26, which was Lucas Piszczek's number, but first impressions, minus that almost on goal, if you will, I think we're okay.
No, I agree with that. Some people, Twitter's a cesspool of shit anyway. But, just hammered him. And I'm like, I'm sorry, you're just delusional idiots. Blaming him for that goal is that's parking up the wrong tree. Also with the own goal, it clipped him, and Stuart Robson said it during the match commentary, it clipped him on his right hip. And that's just a horrible place. That is like the worst possible place because you can't shift your hip fast enough to change the direction. If it hits you in your chest, you can do it. If it hits you in your legs, you can kind of do it. But your hip, that's just a horrible place. Long term, obviously he's a stopgap solution, but he's a solid player. He's proven that for Norway. He's proven that for Union Berlin, who were, much like me, completely shocked by this transfer. But it was good that Dortmund addressed a position that they needed somebody in who could play fullback. I think playing Niklas Süle there, even though Süle actually played quite well as right back, but that's not where you want him for, because you need those rotational options centrally. Marius Wolf obviously had some injury issues, and all the other right backs are just broken right now. So I'm positive by the transfer. It was pretty cheap, and he had a solid overall match. And yeah, he just arrived like 2 seconds before kickoff. So my expectations were really, really low. And he definitely exceeded very low expectations. So overall, I was positive about that. I thought, like you said, Julian Brandt had a pretty good match. Getting back to the whole Bellingham, Özcan, Brandt kind of trio, I agree with you. It was nice to see Dahoud on the bench for Dortmund. I think Salihamidzic would benefit from Dahoud next to him. If you had a trio of Özcan, Dahoud, Bellingham, I think you'll have a much more solid central core with great passing, great movement, good defending. And then honestly, if I was picking, and if everyone is completely fit, Reus and Brandt coming in from the wings, I think can prove devastating, especially with underlapping runs by players like Bellingham and then Haller up front. So I think that'll find itself eventually. Right now, the team is just still dealing with some key injuries. But the 2 players that I think, or the 4 players I think we definitely need to talk about are the 2 that started on the wings, Donyell Malen and obviously Adeyemi, and then the 2 players who came in for them and then scored, in Gio Reyna and Jamie Bynoe-Gittens. I think Donyell Malen actually played okay in the first half. He worked, his work rate was much improved. I know that's one thing that we complained a lot about prior to the break, which seems like was like at Halloween time, that Mon just didn't have a great work rate, especially defensively. He didn't try a lot. He didn't run a lot. And he definitely did. He got in good positions. He brought others in good positions. He had a really good shot at one point that Gikiewicz did a great job saving. Adeyemi, he runs a lot. His work rate is great. Also defensively, he'll go back. All too many times, he just runs into a dead end. In this match, I thought it was okay. I thought he did okay on that right side interplay with Ryerson and with Bellingham. I think he did okay, but it wasn't great. Bynoe-Gittens, it was great to see him back and to see that he scored right away, given his lengthy injury. I thought that was good. He looks strong. He looks fit. He looks bulky. He looks like he's put on some muscle. And I think that will prove to his advantage. I thought he got in good positions often enough. So it was really nice to see him. And I will leave the intro to Gio Reyna to you for now, because I think we all know that I have an opinion.
Well, yeah, I don't even want to talk about this whole thing. I mean, again, had we had an episode last week, I think we would have delved a little bit deeper into the whole Gio Reyna United States men's national team kerfuffle, which it is just a fucking shit show. I don't even know how else to say it. Greg Berhalter is an unqualified moron as far as I can see it, and apparently the sporting director, or whatever the term is in the United States men's national team, was like his old buddy or teammate or whatnot, and he was totally not hired on merit in the first place, which maybe is the original sin from the United States men's national team, to have this guy in a position where he probably does not belong to begin with. And obviously his comments about Gio Reyna, while not naming him at the non-leadership whatever conference that was on the record, off the record, obviously completely harebrained. Like, you should know, if you have any leadership skills, that you cannot talk in any sport, but especially soccer, about a player that you almost sent home because they were pouting after you told them that they had a limited role, which again is completely stupid. Because why? I mean, I don't know the details and what exactly was said, but we all know Gio Reyna, and we do know that he pouts. His body language isn't always ideal. So if we know that, the coach of the United States men's national team should also know that and should know how to handle his players better. That's my first criticism. Obviously, Gio Reyna is not completely without fault here, as we will also discuss in a minute. But my gripe, first of all, is with the adults, and then, of course, the lashing out of Daniel Reyna on the record, off the record, so that led to, official investigation into a domestic violence incident, which I don't know, dates back how many years from Greg Berhalter, because he kicked his then girlfriend. Now
I want to say it was like 20 years ago.
Yeah, even further back. I don't know, Matthias. It's just people who have paid attention to this know it's an entirely unnecessary shit show, but it is a gigantic shit show, and it's also almost tragic because the Reynas and the Berhalters were very good friends, very close knit group. They sort of grew up together. Their wives were roommates, they were teammates on the freaking national team, etc., etc. You all know the story. So obviously this has many layers. And of course, in the middle of this storm is Gio Reyna, who came out to apologize for his behavior, let's say, where he did as you would probably say, pout. And I mean, there were videos that you could see on social media where everyone in the United States were celebrating, and you saw Gio Reyna with his headphones on and just like looking very mopey. So I can totally picture how it must have looked on the training ground and whatnot. But just apart from that, I just want this whole story to go away. But somehow it does not go away, because when you look at the Gio Reyna goal celebration, this time around, you obviously look at various signs he is making. So he's clearly communicating a lot of things there, be it the shush sign or then the Memphis Depay celebration, where he obviously references Berhalter's comments where he said after the World Cup that they currently do not have a Memphis Depay who's scoring goals in the Champions League, which is again an entirely different, entirely dumb comment to make. You have Gio Reyna on your team, you have Christian Pulisic, you have a lot of players that have scored in the Champions League. Christian Pulisic, as far as I know, has won the Champions League with Chelsea. So why would you even say such a dumb thing in the first place? But nevertheless, yeah, Gio Reyna had a quick reference to that, I assume. So, yeah, I personally would have liked if Gio Reyna just, leaves all that nonsense alone and focuses on the black and yellow team for a little bit. And, I think the United States men's national team has caused enough negative headlines. So I just personally would like to give it a rest. But Matthias, what are your thoughts on this situation? And I apologize on the long rant, which was completely from the top of my head.
No, it's fine.
Structured at all.
Let's call it the pre-rant. No, I mean, my opinions. Okay, so a few things. I haven't been a fan of the U.S. men's national team fan base for about 15 years. I have little to no respect for them. So I'll just put that right out there, simply because of the extraordinary amounts of xenophobia shown during the Jürgen Klinsmann era. Klinsmann not without detractors, faults, whatever, but the high amount of comments from supposedly progressive U.S. men's national team fans and articles that basically said all the players that came from the Bundesliga that had dual citizenship weren't, quote unquote, real Americans. I'm a dual citizen. Anybody who said that and thought that, you can fuck the fuck right off. Okay? So I have to get that off my chest right away. So that's one little thing. Second thing, Greg Berhalter. I thought he was a decent MLS coach, but I think the MLS is kind of a joke league, so I don't really care. He is unqualified to be a national team's coach. He is far too conservative, and he shits himself every time the United States plays actually somewhat progressively, and he shows that tactically. So I have no respect for him as a coach. I don't know him as a human being. I can't comment on that. I have absolutely zero respect for the Reynas as a family at this point, given that everything that I have read and has been reported, it's not just an investigation that happened into something that Berhalter and his now wife dealt with 20, 30 years ago, but it also involved basically a sense of blackmail. And the only way that can come to is because of what you talked about, in the sense that the Reynas and the Berhalters were really close. So this is probably quote unquote internal information that nobody else previously had any types of knowledge with, and they kind of worked through it, and they now decided to weaponize that because their petulant, self-entitled brat kid threw a fucking hissy fit. And I've said this before. Gio Reyna, really, really talented. He's got a shit entitled attitude that I have seen as a youth coach in this country too many times. And the actions of the parents are reflected in the actions of the child. I've seen that too. Because you can't tell me that his parents haven't projected that type of entitlement on their kid. I don't care how fucking talented he is. Okay? If you can't pull it together and celebrate with your team, then you can fuck right off. All right? His attitude at Dortmund at times has been miserable. Absolutely atrocious. And that's down to slumping shoulders, not even bothering to press in situations where a quick press would have meant a transition. Nothing, because he pouts. Oh my God, I didn't do it. And that I cannot stand at all. And that needs to change. And some people just have resting pout face. And that's not their fault. That's just the way their face is. But with him, it is perpetual. It's kind of like Christian Pulisic. Every time he's on the ground, he throws his hands up because it's got to be somebody else's fault. And Reyna is kind of the same way in a different way in the terms of pouting. And when I saw that goal celebration and just his look at me now, look on his face, I was like, you little shit. I'm sorry. Why would you then do it? Why do you keep feeding that beast? Unless, of course, you're a bit of a narcissist, which I know a lot of pro athletes are, and they live in environments where that's created around them, and kids are a byproduct of parenting, and that's probably a huge part of this. And I went out on Twitter and I said, I'd be okay if he's gone. Yeah, I'd miss the talent, and I got slammed by all the U.S. men's national team fanboys, and I'd revel in that shit because those people are just wrong. And this once again proved how right I was. He's extremely talented, great on the pitch. If his attitude would mirror his talent just a little bit more, I'd be his biggest fan. But this kind of childish, petty bullshit, Dortmund don't need it in that moment. They really, really, really don't. And I keep getting cited, well, the club say he's great, and the club come out and say all these great things about him. Well, no shit. They're not in the middle of contract negotiations. This isn't like Dembele or Aubameyang. We're trying to force their way out. You know, Gio Reyna isn't there yet. Let's just wait until that comes up.
Also, we have to say he does not have disciplinary problems at Dortmund. He doesn't show up late or anything. You know, Jadon Sancho was disciplined against freaking Barca when we really needed him because he showed up late to a team meeting or whatever it was. Aubameyang had a million problems. It's not that with Gio Reyna.
Not at all.
Not at all. It's just the pouting.
It's body language matters. And when you compound that in a game and you have other players on your team who, you know, have similar issues at times, looking right at you, Rafael Guerreiro, and in the past, Julian Brandt, even though I think he's really worked on that quite a lot.
He did.
You know, occasionally Bellingham can, you know, have that face.
I mean, Donyell Malen has that face.
Well, Donyell Malen has that issue. I'm not really picking that up with Adeyemi, which is nice for young players. And again, he's young. I get it. I understand young players develop, they mature. Jadon Sancho, for the most part, did. Aubameyang never did. Dembele never did. And so we'll have to kind of wait and see. The reason why I think, you know, so Bellingham has had his moments too. A young player. I forget who it was who he completely bitched out. Was it Nico Schulz?
Yes.
That's uncalled for. You don't do that. You do not do that during a match. And I think he's grown from it. But he also has a really strong family dynamic around him that probably lets him know that's not cool. Gio Reyna, from everything I'm seeing from the outside, as a parent, as a former youth coach, and encountering these dynamics on a daily basis with my own kids, this is perpetuated from home. And so I personally am not optimistic that this will change in a positive manner. I'm a little surprised because Claudio Reyna overall was seen as a very positive professional, but it's always different when it's your own kids. And so I hope this changes. I don't believe it will. I enjoy being proven right. In this case, I wish I would be proven wrong, but Gio Reyna is proving me right in this type of behavior. If you keep scoring goals, that's great on that aspect. Readjust your attitude. Become a little bit more mature, just fractionally, and we're good. I'll be honest, when it comes to the time that Gio Reyna will want to leave, because he will want to leave Borussia Dortmund, he will go to the Premier League. That is 100% his ambition. I'm a little concerned about how that's going to play out, but we'll have to wait and see.
Well, here's the good news, is that we do not demand like massive changes from Gio Reyna. You know, just a couple of things in terms of body language, just a couple of things of not pausing your play to complain to the ref, but, you know, just switch back to defensive mode and get to it. And also stay out of the headlines for a while would be nice. Or on the flip side, make more positive headlines, which I think he is more than capable of doing, because he has all the God-given talent that is needed for that. And I mean, apart from that, I think he's a really nice kid. So I don't hate Gio Reyna. I personally like him, but I too have my gripes. But again, we have seen a lot of young players come and go at Borussia Dortmund, and I don't want to say that Gio Reyna is anything out of the ordinary in that regard either. So I think some maturation definitely needs to happen, but then again, he is super young, and I don't want to make excuses for him, but there's always hope that it turns out better than it's currently going, and I'm sure that these recent months have done something to Gio Reyna. Obviously this goal celebration maybe not the cleverest thing to do it and give people at least the interpretation that you make a reference to Greg Berhalter. Maybe it was something entirely else, and people just completely got it wrong. But
no, I'm not giving any benefit of the doubt there.
People on Twitter were like, "Oh, he was just holding his ears," and I'm like, "My guys, there are so many different ways to hold your ears. You don't twist your wrists like that to push the fingers right into your ear, just like Memphis Depay. Like it's not that complicated. And if you have issues seeing such an obvious pantomime, I want to call it, then I do also wonder if you've ever had trouble with realizing that a girl was flirting with you, because man, that's a very obvious signal. But apart from that, it was a great goal. And
it was a hell of a goal. It was a fantastic goal.
Talk about that, because Nico Schlotterbeck, for all that is good and bad, the pass he played was Mats Hummels-esque to Jude Bellingham, who then pinged it to Gio Reyna with a nice flicked header, and the first touch, the setup, and then of course the strike, just magnificent. And Gikiewicz must have thought he was in the wrong movie, because obviously this game is stressful for Dortmund fans, but think about being Augsburg, and they always just come back, and then I think that was almost a final blow to them as well, because they thought that they had the momentum and psychological advantage now that they just made it 3-3, and boom, Gio Reyna with really world-class strike, and it was just such a gorgeous winner. And overall, I think this game had a lot of beautiful goals, and the fact that Dortmund scored 4 goals on an Augsburg side that played an aggressive man-marking scheme is a major positive. The fact that they scored 1 set-piece goal, and I think had at least 2 other really good opportunities to score off a set-piece, off a header. I think Mats Hummels had 1 or 2 where he could have or should have scored, is really positive news. And going forward, especially if this set-piece threat persists, which, it should, is really good news, because Dortmund often do struggle to create from open play. And speaking of Bynoe-Gittens, the fact that he is back, the fact that he is probably more talented than Adeyemi and Malen combined, really does help too. And his strike, of course, was absolutely beautiful, and kudos to Jude Bellingham for ducking quick enough. Maybe he will call it up to the English dodgeball national team for that. I'm not sure, but marvelous strike, and Dortmund, of course, a bit lucky to get away with all 3 points there. But on the other hand, I think they did play well enough to call this a deserved victory. And with that, I think we can move over to tomorrow's game against Mainz, which of course will also be tricky, not least because Jude Bellingham has received his 5th booking and will be suspended for that game. So Matthias, you can now put on your lineup hat and tell me how Edin Terzic is going to tinker that. Obviously, I'm going to take the hat right off, put it on my head, and say it's going to be Mahmoud Dahoud in there. But how will it look anyway?
Well, if you're going to answer for me, then you don't even have to ask me. No, I think that's the most logical choice there. You play Dahoud in there, and that, obviously it's not the same player. The dynamic will dramatically shift. I think because of that shift, I would consider starting either Bynoe-Gittens or Gio Reyna over mine or Adeyemi. I'd probably say, I don't know which one of those two I'd rather sit down, or you just swap them both in. Obviously that's definitely an option as well, given that it's a Englische Woche. So that's something to consider. I think Mainz, the interesting thing for Dortmund will be that I believe the Augsburg match would be a very good practice run for the Mainz match, because I expect similar approaches in many ways from Mainz, who will be very, very difficult, who will be aggressive, who will man mark. And the key there will just be that don't break down in counterattacks. I think by having Dahoud there, who will naturally drop deeper, I think you'll close down the center a little bit more. As far as other changes go, I think we'll probably see more or less the same starting lineup. I don't picture Sebastien Haller starting the match yet. I think he'll be coming in the second half again, would be my estimation. I think Moukoko will start. I don't see Modeste really getting many minutes anymore in a Dortmund shirt, unfortunately for him. I do feel bad for him that he really wasn't able to make any impact since signing. I would hope to see a change in central defense. So I would hope to see Niklas Süle start either for Schlotterbeck or Hummels. Probably I would prefer to see him start over Schlotterbeck at this point, because
traditionally this season it just has worked better.
Yes.
The Süle-Hummels combo was the best one.
Yeah, because then you move Hummels into his preferred left slot, and Süle would play on the right slot. Süle is deceptively fast. I think he's proven that when he played at right back. So I think that's the most likely scenario. I think Ryerson will probably start. Guerrero will probably start. I see no reason why you wouldn't have Brandt start. I think he actually had a pretty good game. And overall, he's been in good form this season. So I think he should definitely be someone to start. And then it'll come down to the fitness of other people that were on the bench, Marius Wolf, for instance, and then kind of take it from there. So that's where I most likely see it, that Bynoe-Gittens and or Gio Reyna get to start over Malen and or Adeyemi, and then bring in Süle for Schlotterbeck most likely.
Yeah, I assume this is probably how it's going to look. I would not be surprised if Malen, Adeyemi and Moukoko start again, just because of the impact Reyna and Gittens can have off the bench, even though I think Gittens did say that he's ready to play, but obviously he did not really play or participate in the entire training camp. He had some problems too, so I don't know what his fitness levels are. And of course, we've seen it with Jadon Sancho in his first impact season. He was more of an impact sub for half season or so before he became a starter. And I personally wouldn't mind to have this option late in the game, especially against side against Mainz, where you would have him rather run at tired legs than at still fully fit Mainz defenders. I think this is just more helpful. And overall, just one more thought. I personally would like to see a different system when Sebastien Haller is at full strength. I think that Dortmund would benefit by a 5-3-2 lineup. I do like a back three with Hummels, Schlotterbeck, and Süle if that's possible. That gives more cover to Guerrero and Ryerson. And of course, you also then have a bit more solidity in midfield. I would play there Özcan, Brandt, and Bellingham. That would be my three midfield. But more importantly, because you have with Bellingham and Brandt already two, connecting players, two links, you don't need a true number 10 And most importantly, Sebastien Haller is a fixed point in our system, really. And we have the benefit of having 2 or even 3 players, if you really want it, with Moukoko, Adeyemi, and Malen, whose strength is to be sort of hang in the Spitze, the second number 9 that tucks in behind the true number 9, if you will, and that play their best football if they play off a player like Sebastien Haller. And I think that could be a system. Now, obviously, Reina and Gittens have not featured in it yet, but, they can be impact players and starters when the season gets a bit thicker, or they just become better than other players. But I just think from a setup of, prioritizing some defensive stability, because Dortmund right now, I think the biggest defensive struggle is actually their own build-up play and losing the ball by playing it forward and then having it stolen immediately and then being wide open to a counterattack. If you have a backline like this, I think at least on paper there should be some more passing outlets where you prevent poor giveaways. And of course, having Haller and Moukoko, Malen, or Adeyemi to play off of Haller, I think is going to create striker tandems that are really, really strong. Now, the problem, of course, is, as you can already see, you have 3 players for the, false 9 position, but you have only 1 player for the true 9 position, I think. Terzic wanted to create that with Anthony Modeste, but let's be honest, that just has not worked out. So I think in the next summer, Dortmund do have to find a better replacement for Sebastien Haller and the player type that he is. You need a striker with some hold-up play. You cannot just bet all your money on that one player and him being healthy all the time. So, that is just an idea I have when I think about Dortmund setup right now. I personally have been informed by the club years and by the 4-2-3-1 system. But I think considering how the squad is set up right now, I actually do think that the back 3/back 5 is more conducive. And I would really love to know if you want to talk to me on Twitter at Stefan Butzko. So what your thoughts are out there. And Matthias, of course, what your thoughts are on this just in general as a concept. Now, obviously, Terzic has not really trained this, and I don't think he is going to make use of that option quite a bit. But if we see it at some point down the season as an adjustment, obviously, where all the credit goes to. It'll be me then.
Yep, you're the tactical coach. I'm the motivational coach, obviously. We both take full credit for anything that happened positively, anything that happened negatively. We told you so.
Yeah, of course.
Of course. No, I like that. I mean, we can't forget that, in Haller's, 2 stints where he was the most effective at Ajax or at Eintracht Frankfurt, he benefited from similar approaches. So, no, I think that's definitely something that Dortmund should at least look at, especially because, lo and behold, we have depth at striker. I don't even know what to do with 3 of those people.
Yeah, Lars, I think, said that he doesn't even know the last time that happened. I think, what was it? Aubameyang? Not
Sergio Ramos. Adrian Ramos. And Ciro Immobile. Yeah. So, yeah. It's been a while.
And before that, what was it, a Julian Schieber combination? Or was it also just
I don't even know. I think it was...
Do we have to go as far back as like the Rangelov days?
It's been a long time. It's been a long time. So I think you should, and especially because Dortmund, I mean, all criticism we've had, Dortmund have a benefit of, okay, you got multiple strikers that are proven goal scorers in the Bundesliga. You've got 3 central defenders who are, when they're not having a horrible day, they're really, really good. And you have options at wingbacks also because then someone like Marius Wolf can really shine, with his strengths. And you've got solid players centrally. I'd be surprised if they're not at least looking at it now. Just to keep options open and have some tactical flexibility, and so that you are not entirely predictable. That's always the one scare you have, is being too predictable in your build-up play, which, okay, that's there. The fact that Dortmund rely heavily on their left wing, which if I'm Mainz or Leverkusen or anybody, I'm going to attack Dortmund's left side all day long, because you've got Guerrero who doesn't track back. You potentially have a Daniel Mahlen who doesn't really track back. You have either an erratic Schlotterbeck or a slow Hummels. I mean, that's the side to attack. Now, granted, you are opening yourself up to possibly the most attacking side of Dortmund's lineup as well for counterattacks, but that's definitely something to keep in mind there. You know, as far as Mainz themselves, you know, I think they're kind of where they ought to be, that kind of middle of the pack Bundesliga side. Their high flying time under Bo Svensson, I think, is done, at least for now. But they're always going to be very, very difficult for Dortmund. Let's just hope that for a change, their keeper doesn't have the greatest day of his life, which has happened all too often against Mainz for Dortmund. But this is a match that Dortmund has to win. I mean, there's no question about it. And then,
I mean, they lost to Schalke. I'm sorry. If you lose to Schalke, you must not do anything against Dortmund. Yeah,
especially because Schalke right now, as we speak, are down 3-0 to Leipzig.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so Schalke will be relegated. I think there's no question about that.
Did you know that they have not, that they set a new record by becoming the team with the longest non-winning streak on the road in the Bundesliga?
I didn't know that. I have no idea.
They have not won 36 straight, or they're winless in 36 straight road games in the Bundesliga. And considering that there was a whole season in the second division in between, that means their last their last win on the road dates back to November 9th, 2019. Imagine going 4 years, or however long that is. I can't do math right now, my COVID-fogged brain. Without a singular road win in the Bundesliga.
That's a long time.
I mean, Dortmund have, I think, only won one road win out of their last 6, which is also not great. But, you know, at least they have 2 chances now this week to end that streak, if you will. Nevertheless, man, Schalke are horrible in ways I did not think anyone could be horrible, because just look at VfL Bochum, who resource-wise should be not far away from Schalke either, and they're doing much better right now. I even think they're above the kill zone in the Bundesliga, right?
Yeah, they're sitting 14th. And think about it, when they made their manager change, they had 1 point, and now they have 16. So they are going in the opposite direction of, well, I mean, Schalke are just, I mean, granted, they've overtaken Schalke, but you look at Hertha, Stuttgart, Augsburg, and then my favorite, who's down there now and kind of looking nervously at the bottom, is Hoffenheim. I think, that's pretty much where a Breitenreiter side should be. I'm glad I'm right. So, but are there more things you want to talk about Mainz before we get into a Leverkusen side that was an interesting match against Gladbach?
Yeah, just one last thing is the prediction, I guess. And is, I'm not going to make a prediction, I'm making a demand. I demand that Dortmund win this, as boring as it gets, with 2-0 and go home. I do not want any chaos. I do not want any heart attacks. I do not want to age 15 years in one half, because Nico Schlotterbeck doesn't know which foot is left and which foot is right. So I would appreciate if Borussia Dortmund for once could just come out with a scrappy yet professional win on the road in stinking Mainz, and then go home, train for a day, and then play in Leverkusen, which of course will be the next chaos game guaranteed, because it's Bayer Leverkusen. And I think on form, Bayer Leverkusen right now a little bit better than Dortmund. I just talked about the 5-3-2 setup. I think they actually have something like that figured out a little bit better than Dortmund, and they are very strong on the counterattack. They are very good at making teams that give away possession poorly, like in Nico Schlotterbeck, or against Gladbach on Sunday, like Benzebaini. So, he's looking to fit right in. To punish teams like that. So I'm really not looking forward to the Leverkusen game. So hence the Mainz game needs to be won, because I have no expectations for Dortmund to do any good against Bayer Leverkusen, considering Leverkusen's strengths and Dortmund's current weaknesses and their overall state. So the only hope I have for the Leverkusen game is that Bayer Leverkusen will be Bayer Leverkusen and shoot themselves in the foot multiple times, that all you see is a little stump dangling from the hip.
Well, that just got really graphic.
Yes, it did. But I need to make a graphic to picture you the extent of foot shooting that needs to happen for me imagining a Dortmund win at the Bayer Arena.
I'm a little surprised you're that negative. I mean, it is Leverkusen. With Mainz, I'm going to go 3-1. I think, Mainz may get one near the end or whatever, but I'm not overly concerned. I really hope Sebastien Haller scores at least one goal. That would be fantastic. Now, as far as Leverkusen goes, I watched the Gladbach game, and I was very impressed by Leverkusen until then I was reminded, oh, that's right, it's Leverkusen. Because, they came out of the gates, pushed Gladbach around, bossed them around, 3-0 up, and then it ended 3-2. And honestly, could have ended in a draw. So
I think we should just give Leverkusen an early 2-0 lead or so. Then we'll have them right where we want them.
Make them feel comfortable, and then we win 4-2. Personally, yes, Leverkusen are going to be very, very difficult. They're a very talented team. Florian Wirtz is back, which is great for him, great for Leverkusen, not so great for everybody else. I've been somewhat impressed by what Xabi Alonso has been able to do. He's kind of reformed the team a little bit. I think they have some glaring weaknesses. I think their wingbacks are strong weaknesses. I think their central defenders are major liabilities. I know, it's ironic. But given where the strengths and weaknesses of both sides are, I expect this to be one of those typical Dortmund-Leverkusen matches where I'm going to age, and not in a good way. Not like a fine wine, more like a box of Mad Dog 2020 that somebody left in the back seat too long. And so I think, oh boy, I wouldn't be shocked by this being a 3-3, a 4-3, or a 2-5. Picking this one's going to be tough. But being the eternal optimist I am, even nowadays, I'm going to say Dortmund are going to win this one, but it's not going to be, it's going to be fun for people who are neither Leverkusen nor Dortmund fans. And what's his name? I want to say from ESPN, it's Moreno, who's their studio pundit, who's just annoying.
Who do you not find annoying, though?
From their studio
grump.
From their studio punditry, there's a lot of studio pundits in general tend to be rather frustrating. But he says things like, "Well, you really have to love Dortmund to be a fan of them." Yeah, that's usually how that stuff works. But at the same time, I say Dortmund are going to win this one 4th. Let's make it another 4-3 because why not? I think a 3-2 is probably more likely. So I'll say 3-2 for Dortmund.
Right. I'm saying Leverkusen is winning this 17-13. That is where we're at right now. I'm sorry. I'm not
excellent.
This does not deserve. It's going to be a clown show, so this does not deserve any treatment of any seriousness. Who is actually the current Leverkusen goalkeeper, because is Radetzky not injured? Or is he actually playing? Because this is usually the one thing between Leverkusen and Dortmund is that our backline is not perfect, but I think theirs is even weaker. I mean, as long as you're playing Jonathan Tah, you are also not a serious outlet, and Lukas Radetzky just having an awful season. So I do not know if he played in that loss against Gladbach. Yeah, indeed, in that win against Gladbach. Yeah, indeed he did. So maybe I do think that Dortmund can pull out a win because the goalkeepers will make the difference, and Gregor Kobel might save a couple of quote-unquote unsavable shots, and Radetzky will not. And Dortmund also have a few better subs with Bynoe-Gittens and Giorena. So, the only problem is that Leverkusen killer Marco Reus will probably still not feature in this game, but the curse of the ex Julian Brandt might do this task for him. And I'm also really intrigued if Bayer Leverkusen can handle a late substitution of Sebastien Haller, because that might change Dortmund's overall counter-attacking setup in a way that might be too much for Leverkusen's tired defense to overcome. So there are a lot of factors to consider, of course, in this game, but there is indeed actual hope that Dortmund will just outscore Leverkusen, and I don't know if 17-12 or 13 is a realistic result, but you said for the 3, so I don't know. I too expect a lot of goals, and if not goals, it's just going to be a lot of comical chances that are weirdly being missed, but this cannot be like a 0.1 XG affair. But anyway, one player we have not really talked about yet so far, Matthias, a lot is Youssoufa Moukoko, because he did not really feature that much in the Augsburg game, minus the one chance that he whiffed. But of course, this back and forth drama with a million rumors and day-to-day updates on Youssoufa Moukoko's contract extensions finally come to a close, because he did finally put pen to paper, and the result is a contract extension until 2026. The reported base salary fee is around 5 million, and of course it's now more structured to performance success, I guess. So if Dortmund do well and Moukoko does well, he'll earn more in bonuses, and if not, then not. And also, I think there was a 10 million euro sign-on fee, and I don't know what the agent got also in a little envelope. No idea, but I personally am very happy with this contract extension, because it was becoming very annoying to read about it on the daily. I also do think that Youssoufa Moukoko needs to be at Borussia Dortmund. There's no better place for him personally to develop. And, we can of course talk about the length of said contract, but I personally am content with that. Obviously, a 5-year deal is what you're probably aiming for if you try to secure the future of what looks to be a generational talent. But on the other hand, there are also a couple of question marks behind Youssoufa Moukoko and how and where his development will go. I'll be honest, I'll say that. So, not paying him for the entire time as an insurance might also help. I hope it doesn't. I hope in the end, Dortmund were hoping they got a 5-year deal, but it is what it is. Matthias, how happy are you with this decision?
Well, I'm very, very happy. I think Sebastian Kehl has had a good winter window. I mean, Ryerson was a good, astute, and stealthy buy. And then extending the contract for what many have said is the biggest Dortmund talent in a generation who comes out of your own academy was needed, but not at all costs. And there was, I think, at the end, a little bit of hardball, and when the club basically said, "Okay, this is the offer. It's like this, take it or leave it." At this point, we're not going to pay even more. You haven't proven yourself yet at this level. This is a contract that is structured in a way to help you prove yourself, and then the next contract after that would reflect proven worth versus potential worth. I mean, this is a contract based on potential worth, but that gives him more than he has right now, which I think I'm going to say deserves. And especially if he develops to the degree that he's developed throughout his career, I mean, it's pennies on the dollar at this point. So no, I'm very, very happy to keep someone who has come through the club ranks completely at the club. I think that's very important for a club like Borussia Dortmund, in general for Bundesliga clubs, to have highly talented, quality players that identify with the club at a very personal level. Looking at, Marco Reus, probably the best example, or Edin Terzic on the bench is another example, and people in the front office as well. So it's good. It's good for the player. It's good for the club. I think it's great for the league. It would have been a shame to see him. I mean, obviously it would have been gutting to see him go to Bayern, which I don't really think it necessarily would have happened. But to see him leave the league that would on a free, that would have been rough. So this was good for everybody.
I just also think he would have majorly struggled wherever he would have shown up, because look at his game right now. I mean, yes, you can see the talent, but he's still so very raw, and there's still so much development to be done that I don't think he would have really fared well, especially had he gone to the Premier League. I just don't think that would have been a good idea at all. So I always thought that Dortmund were not in the weakest position in this negotiation to begin with, just because of the actual reality that is. But sometimes, a player like Moukoko and his advisors see it differently. Sometimes people have other ideas of themselves and what their strengths and their current position is, and negotiate from that standpoint. But overall, I think it's just a very good signal for Dortmund that this ended in a happy ending, if you will. But there were also some reports from Funke, I think it was, that when his contract extension was announced in the stadium, that a few people booed. I honestly don't know who would boo. Like, I'm sorry. He's 19 years old? Do you really need to boo a 19-year-old because you think he demanded too much money or whatnot? This is sort of the job of the agent. I'm sorry that football is a business and has some really ugly sides to it, but I'm not blaming Moukoko himself for that. You can boo his agent, but not at that moment. I don't know. I just feel very weird about that.
It's stupid. It's kind of like, I'm sure it's going to happen again on the weekend. Julian Brandt's going to get booed. It's, and obviously there are transfers where you can go, oh, well, that really stung. Mario Götze is probably the best example of that. Hummels to a degree, Lewandowski to a degree, but overall, yeah, it's a business, and these players don't know if they're going to blow out both their knees tomorrow and not make another penny off the sport. So I have no issues with that. It's the agent acts in the best interest of their client, not in the best interest of the club. They're not paid by the club; they're paid by their client. The clubs act in the best interest of the club, and you've seen plenty of clubs be pretty ruthless with players. So yeah, just chill.
Yeah, I don't know. Obviously, there are a few more things to talk about in terms of this transfer window. But Matthias, I'll be honest, I just don't feel like I can talk much more because
no, it's gone. We've had a long chat.
The COVID is taking over a little bit. I need to hold back my cough just way too much. So as always, everyone out there, thank you so much for listening. And I'll try to make it back next week. I think I'll be in much better shape and not rambling as idiotically as I was today. But of course, I cannot promise that because who knows what Dortmund do in the meantime. But yeah, I had fun talking about Dortmund again, and I'm looking forward to, despite it all, to this final stint of the season. I mean, I'm looking forward to the Champions League games against Chelsea. I'm looking forward to the cup tie against VfL Bochum. And one last thing is, I'm not really looking forward to it because what I'm going to say now is nothing I want to say, but I don't know if you recall, but in the past I've always said that there is probably only ever going to be a true chance for a different German champion in the Bundesliga once Bayern are without Lewandowski and Manuel Neuer. But guess what? One skiing accident and one spectacular move to Barcelona later, here we are. So the only team I really see right now that could capitalize is the team coached by Marco Rose. Unfortunately, that's no longer Borussia Dortmund, but RB Leipzig. So I just do wonder on the final note, and not because they're just bludgeoning Schalke. I don't know what the score is because I don't care. I don't pay attention. But Matthias, I do think that this could become a more of a title racy season overall in the Bundesliga than previously thought. I just do not know if Dortmund will have anything to say about that. Certainly not if they defend like they do against Augsburg. But as a final thought, I just wanted to hand off to you like that.
Yeah, I mean, Leipzig are up 4-0 right now after 56 minutes. It's one of the tighter Bundesliga top sevens I've seen at this stage. Technically, today and tomorrow's match days are the Herbstmeisterschaft. It's the halfway point of the season to be 17th. Bayern, of course, are going to be Herbstmeister. But, as things stand, after 16 match days between first Bayern and 7th Wolfsburg, it's 9 points. I mean, we've seen 9 points between first and second, let alone first and 7th. So I think it's really, really tight. I think it's also relatively tight at the bottom. So it's an interesting Bundesliga season. I think we've seen that in quite a few leagues overall, that it's been very, very interesting for the most part. Italy's no different. England's no different. So, yeah, unfortunately, my concern is that you are not wrong, that Leipzig is, at least this season, the most likely contender to maybe dethrone Bayern. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I'd rather see Bayern win the title 1,000 times in a row before Leipzig winning it once. And if it's not Dortmund, then, I would hope it'd be Frankfurt instead.
Yep.
I'll be honest, I was completely shocked by the Freiburg-Wolfsburg match. That absolutely floored me.
Jesus Christ.
I did not see that coming. Just like I didn't see the Köln-Bremen match coming. But Freiburg-Wolfsburg, that was really like, whoa. And, and that obviously puts the Dortmund-Wolfsburg match a little bit into perspective. It's definitely not going to be a boring Bundesliga season. So, no matter how it shakes out in the end, I think we can look forward to an interesting second half of the season.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the fitter Sebastien Haller becomes, the better Dortmund will become structurally with him. It's just a given fact. And I just do hope they manage to pull off a couple of transfers or whatnot, just to strengthen their backline a little bit. And of course, we do need more central defensive midfielders, but I think this is going to be more of an issue for the summer, especially with the looming exit of Jude Bellingham. But nothing I would like to talk about because we're out of time. So goodbye. Thank you for listening. Until next time.